Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, council, we're back. I see we still have quorum. Call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole, Monday, April 1st, in session. After looking at the agenda, does any council member have any amendments to the agenda? Okay. And that's the case. We have a motion put forward by Councillor Stewart that the agenda for the April 1st, 2019 regular meeting of committee be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Opposed? None? That carries. Also, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does any councillor have such an interest or general nature thereof? Not seeing any, I will ask the clerk to take note. Department reports, 4.1, community planning and development. So we have a motion put forward by Councillor Wink that Committee of the Whole receive the Community Planning and Development March 2019 report for information, discussion thereof.
Crickets.
Okay, we okay to move on then?
Question.
Oh, pardon me?
Just need to call the question.
Yeah. So we just call the question. All those in favor of receiving this report? All those opposed? Motion carries. Corporate services. So 4.21. Corporate Services Monthly Report. Have a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that Committee of the Whole receive the Corporate Services March 2019 report for information. Discussion thereof. Councillor Schofield.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. And just the part there, just for the 426 drain bills for the Swayze drain. I believe that was for work that was done in 2015, correct?
No.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Were there any culverts replaced along that?
I would have to pass it to Barb.
I was rephrasing that. Any culverts replaced that might have been charged to the people along the, affected that?
Mr. Mayor, through you, so this was actually work that was done about 4 years ago. I don't have the specifics of the work, but I can certainly look that up and get back to you. I don't know if there were any culvert replacements, but it was work that was done from 4 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can just let me know
Yep,
if there's a resident that would like to know.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the Community Corporate Services Report? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, and any opposed? No, motion carries. Fire and bylaw services. Report put forward by Councillor Corr that Committee of the Whole received the Fire and Bylaw Services March 2019 report for information. Any comments, questions on this report from the chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are we still getting a lot of complaints about the odor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that report we received 8 that last month. 4 of them were repeats or from the same source.
Mayor, I know I sat with Councillor Trophy here at the meeting a couple Fridays ago, and we mentioned about today's the day people could smoke on the streets, marijuana, if I'm not mistaken. There's
April
some.
1st is when the law kicks in for
The retail. Okay.
so you can start growing in your own backyard. You're allowed floor plans.
Okay.
And the smoking, if you, a couple, two months ago in the report, the regional smoking bylaw, they inserted the vaping in the cannabis. The bylaw remains the same, but they just inserted those two words to include that. So it falls under the same rules.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure whether in the fire department, the Asante sign, may I address this at that?
Oh, yeah, that's, I think that's.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to talk about the digital sign. I've had a couple of people talk to me about digital signs in general because they're business people, and what they're finding is people are wanting to install digital signs not only to advertise their business, but also to generate revenue through use of signs. And what's happening is they're claiming that businesses are renting closets in their businesses and thereby establishing the permission to use the sign to advertise their businesses along with a sign for this specific business. That's just a general comment. And in general, I know the Asante where it's located, but just down the road is Sun Life. And I'm sure there's other people with the same type of business. Once we approve one of these individuals for an electronic sign, I believe we're opening ourselves up to other signs of the same nature. Do you have any comment with regards to that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, back to your renting space out, our bylaw speaks to third-party signage. It's not allowed to advertise other people's businesses on your specific property. So if you have a sign, electronic sign, it's only for your business.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Specifically, I know there are some signs, for instance, down the corner of Rice Road and Highway 20, and as far as I know, those businesses that have their advertising on there aren't all located there.
Referring to the Ironwood building?
Yes.
I'd have to look, we can look into it, but it's not.
Yeah. I'm not asking you. I know that that's a business model that people are using these days to get around sign bylaws.
So our bylaw is fairly strict compared to other municipalities. We don't allow billboards, we don't allow advertising signs like third party. And I can get into the more, I could send you the bylaw itself, but, and then as far as the electronic signs, a couple years ago, council had come to us and said that they would like to have any electronic sign application put forth to speak to, so it's under your control. So any electronic sign that comes through has to go through council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the fire services? If not, I will call the question. That Committee of the Whole receive the Fire and Bylaw Services March 2019 report for information. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Where are we now? So now, 4.4.1, the gypsy moth, I believe. Yes, so here we go. So motion put forward by Councillor Trophy that staff be directed to proceed with an urban infestation survey through Trees Unlimited, utilizing funds from the 2019 beautification operating budget as requested, that staff return with a report once the level of infestation is known. That includes defined treatment areas, cost estimates of aerial spraying plan, and potential cost recovery options from private landowners. Discussion on this program. Is there oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilor.
For you, Mr. Mayor. So if Hillside Park was sprayed last year, does it require spraying again this year? And if it requires spraying, does it not make sense to overspray slightly to cover those properties that directly abut town property? If we don't spray trees on properties adjacent to town property, would we not be creating further infestation next year on town property? So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in this year's operating budget, we've included $25,000 to conduct the infestation investigation as well as do the spraying. That budget would cover the town-owned properties and our unopened road allowances that the town owns and maintains. It would not include the cost for spraying any rural or urban private lands. We do have an expert here that could speak, I think, on behalf of Trees Unlimited with respect to the overspray and how that would affect infestation levels in previous years or in future years. I wouldn't be the expert on that matter. I would have to get back to you unless Paul would like to speak to that.
Oh,
If that's allowed.
if he does, if we are gonna allow him to speak, then we have to have a consensus from council to allow him to approach. Okay, excellent. If he so wants to.
well, I'm not really dressed very well, but sorry. I was just coming to listen, not to
Yeah.
speak.
That's fine.
But if you have a question, the infestation is only for 1 year. And yes, it would be beneficial to spray some of the very nice oaks that are on adjacent properties to Hillcrest Park. I suspect the infestation will sweep around Hillcrest on a pancake, kind of stop before we get to South Pelham because there's less oak, and then there'll be an area in Kunda Park that'll probably need spraying with, which again has very large stands of oak. So, sorry, sir, to answer your question about reinfestation, the gypsy moth blows in from all over. So it's, yes, possible that an area not sprayed immediately adjacent to a spray block could allow caterpillars back in the next year, but it's more likely that there'll be the infestation that's out in central Pelham and central West Lincoln that'll blow into Pelham if it exists. So, through you, Mr. Mayor, if we sprayed Hillside last year, do we need to spray Hillside again this year? Well, I've been through parts of the park. There is, I would say, a light to moderate infestation is definitely less than it was last year. But the infestation to the west is massive. So you're going to have countless caterpillars blowing in from certainly Memorial and Cambro roads into central Fonthill. Okay, thank you.
Now, you had an open house, and at that open house, private landowners signed up. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. So, so you will end up obviously GPSing the whole works,
Yes.
and then is it your responsibility that if someone sprays here and someone sprays here, and this guy hasn't signed up, is it adjacent landowners to contact the neighbors, or will you do that?
Well, it's a combination, but it is essentially a voluntary program, so the landowner's participating. If an adjacent landowner is not, they must get consent in writing from the adjacent landowner if the house is within 100 meters of the spray block.
Okay. And it's so much an acre, I believe.
As the acreage increases, it decreases on average per acre. Most of the cost is within the first 3 acres. So
Yes.
the first 3 acres is 510 for 2 applications.
And is that within, that's not just the town?
Rural, that's only rural.
Yes?
So
Oh, okay.
urban would be totally different. We'd look at, just from memory, we sprayed in 2009 about 80 acres in the center part of town. And I think the spray cost was around $65,000, something like that. When you include the police, the road closures, twin engine helicopters, and that would be the entire cost. I think the spray was probably around 45,000, somewhere in that range, if I recall.
And so when you calculate your cost per acre, that's combining everybody, that's combining the town spraying, the private spraying?
Yes.
That's everything within the town boundaries?
No, only rural.
Oh, only rural?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's a totally different ball of wax when you're talking, literally hundreds of landowners in a urban area versus,
certainly hundreds of acres that are outside in a rural area. It's, you have significantly more landowners we would have to contact around the spray block area. So that has been the burden of the township, to send out a letter to those who are participating and those who are adjacent to.
Okay,
That's how it was done in 2009.
okay. And you'll be working with Ryan on this, I'm sorry, Director?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Trees Unlimited will be working with our operations manager to do the infestation survey and then come up with a plan that we'll report back to council on.
Yes, and Ryan and you have worked before together, so you, yes.
We'll have it ready for next council meeting.
Oh, okay, excellent. Okay, I'm sorry, any other questions? Not seeing any? Thank you very much. Yes, so that staff return with a report, once the level of infestation is known, that includes defined treatment areas, cost estimates of aerial spraying plan, and potential cost recovery options from private landowners. All those in favor of this motion? Thank you. No one opposed. Motion carries. Okay, and then, motion from Councillor Hahn, that Committee of the Whole receive the Public Works and Utilities March 2019 report for information. Discussion on the Public Works report. Not seeing any. I will call the question for a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. All those opposed? Motion carries. Recreation and Wellness, I believe, yes, motion from Councillor Corr, that Committee of the Whole receive the Recreation, Culture, and Wellness March 2019 report for information. Any comments, questions on this report? Councillor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a possibility of getting a report similar to what we did with the usage of the rental? Get a cost on busing? It's nice to know how many people are taking the bus, but I think it's more important what it's costing us per month and per rider would be more important.
Madame CAO?
Yep.
Okay. Next cow or next,
Yeah, I'll talk to Vicky.
yeah, okay,
The next
Thank you.
cow.
okay. Councillor Hahn?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see like a projection of potential revenues for various programs of interest and various courses that will be offered at the MCC to use the available space in the Kersey room and any other available space. So I just go through the report. It talks about kind of what has been, but not about what will be. So some of the interest courses, if they're looking into them, and what they project those revenues to be based on attendance. And it's really that target audience of 25 to 55-year-olds, because there's, as I mentioned in the past, there's kind of the younger crowd and then there's an older crowd, but there's not a lot of programs for that middle-aged crowd.
Councillor Trophy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody can answer, but if they get back to us, they just had the Kersey kitchen, internal 5 hours it was used in the month of March. I just want to know if that's to do with like staff, or is that the junior B using that kitchen? Is that they considered internal?
No, they're not, through you, Mr. Mayor, they're not internal.
So that internal 5 hours at $50, that's, what would that be?
I would have to find out what
Okay.
that was.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so,
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. And motion from Councillor Trophy that Committee of the Whole receive the Clerk's Department March 2019 report for information. Any comments, questions on that? I happened to be in Town Hall today and watched our clerk officiate a wedding, and it was actually kind of neat. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Any other questions on the clerk's report?
Did you give him a wedding gift?
I did, yeah. Wrong place at the wrong time, what can I say? Okay, so no other, I'll ask for the vote on this. All in favor? Great. All opposed? Great. Okay, so, Clerk's Department. Oh, no, never done, oh, we just did the clerks. Okay, cannabis and advisory. So a motion put forward by Councillor Trophy that the Committee of the Whole receive this report on the Cannabis Advisory Committee, and that the committee recommend that council approve the terms of reference for the Cannabis Advisory Committee, and that the committee directs staff to proceed with the advertising to recruit members to the Cannabis Advisory Committee. Questions and comments? Councillor Trophy.
Yeah, I just want to make an amendment to that, terms of reference that were provided by staff.
Yep, read it, please.
Okay, so when we first started this, we put this thing through, it was more designed to help out with the bylaw and everything that we're going through, the time frame, and putting measures in place for this coming October. So we were thinking that the terms of was calling it a Cannabis Control Committee. So if I can just read out the terms. So under the solution statement, how might the Cannabis Control Committee provide advice to council on mitigating adverse land use impacts of cannabis production facilities in the town of Pelham, as well as provide an opportunity to improve relations with the cannabis producers? So that's why I would like the first part amended to. I'm reading the amendments in there.
But we did discuss this last council meeting, that the reason it's called an advisory committee is because you're meeting, getting facts, discussing, and then you come back with those facts to advise council on bylaw situations. So that is why it is an advisory committee of council.
That's fine, I understand it. This is just how I would like to amend it. If it goes through, it goes through, and if it doesn't.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the councillor has provided a number of various amendments I'm just wondering if I can somehow get the amendments up on the screen, because it's going to be difficult for council to vote on them in this form unless you go through them one by one. So the first,
Can I provide them each with a copy?
oh, certainly, if you have copies for everybody. See if I can get this up here.
Thank you, sir.
If you want to do them one by one. I don't know if you want to go through the amendments one by one.
Okay, but you don't think we should just, so now we're gonna call this to the vote?
On the amendment to propose the name change to control
Yes.
committee. There's just too many amendments to do on block, I'm afraid
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
that way you
No, I
won't be
think we
able to
do have
divide it.
No, we do have to, that's a good idea, breaking it up. And because this is a cow, he doesn't need a seconder?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so then the first amendment is how might the cannabis, or changing advisory to control committee, provide advice to council on mitigating adverse land use impacts of cannabis production facilities in the town of Pelham, as well as provide an opportunity to improve relations with cannabis producers. So, I get, the big thing here is the name, I would think. Yeah.
Through Mr. Mayor, the first change would be to revise it to the Cannabis Control Committee as opposed to the Cannabis Advisory
Okay,
Committee.
so we're gonna vote on that one first.
I can't get the screen to come up, so yes.
Okay. Okay, so first we're gonna vote on this amendment, and just this one amendment. How might the Cannabis Control Committee as opposed to Cannabis Advisory Committee? So all those in favor of the amendment, raise your hands. Okay, so, John, you were in, okay. Motion passes. No, I got one here someplace. I refuse to steal your pen the second time. Okay. So that goes, and now, so then we continue with that sentence, as well as, I'll read the whole thing again. No, I won't bother. Yeah, cannabis production facilities in the town of Pelham, and this is the change, as well as provide an opportunity to, scratch the and, to improve relations with cannabis producers. All those for this amendment.
Just ask for any debate on it.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. First of all, any debate on this amendment? Sorry. Okay, so those in favor of this amendment? Okay, so that amendment passes. Okay, so then we go down to the purpose. The Town of Pelham Cannabis Control Committee shall be an advisory committee providing advice to council on opportunities to mitigate against adverse land use impacts of cannabis production facilities and cannabis-related uses in the town. And here's the change here then. The immediate priority is the recommendation of control measures, including policies, bylaws, regulations, and standards that can be implemented prior to the expiry of interim control bylaw number 4046, 2018 on the 15th of October, 2019. So that'll do, so that's that. So all those, discussion on the amendment. Okay, so all those in favor of this amendment. Okay, so that amendment carries.
The next amendment is to strike that paragraph.
Pardon me?
The next amendment would be
Yeah,
to
we just forget
strike-
about it.
We have to vote to strike
Oh,
it, though.
do we? Oh, I see, okay. So we have to vote to strike the one that you see that already striked or stroked. The Cannabis Advisory Committee will also provide advice to council on ways to develop collaborative relationships with cannabis producers in order to improve relations with cannabis producers and the community. So discussion on striking this from the terms of reference. No discussion. Then I call it to order, and I call this amendment to a vote. Okay, passes. Or, yeah, okay. So then we go down to, guess I'll read the whole thing, or just about.
Need to add those two bullets.
Okay. So we'll start at the safety, health, and environmental concerns. And then the changes are other nuisances and loss of enjoyment, financial costs to the community. So let's do that first. So other nuisances and loss of enjoyment and financial costs to the community. Any discussion on these amendments? Okay. All those in favor of these amendments? Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you just read that? So then it got more meaning to it. Some of the staff won't even know.
Okay, you want the whole
That
thing?
way-
We'll read it all. Okay, no problem. So this is under objectives. This Cannabis Control Committee is an advisory committee that provides advice on strategies to mitigate against adverse land use impacts from cannabis production facilities, including but not limited to odor impacts, light impacts, traffic and parking impacts, impacts on adjacent agricultural lands and properties, stormwater management, safety, health, and environmental concerns, other nuisances and loss of enjoyment, financial costs to the community. I guess we'll stop there. So other nuisances and loss of enjoyment, financial costs to the community. Any discussion on those two? Okay, all those in favor of this amendment? Okay, so that amendment passes. So then we go down. The Cannabis Control Committee will review options provided by staff and conduct research related to best practices of other jurisdictions to address these land use impacts and will assist with the development of appropriate land use policies, regulations, and procedures for better managing the impacts of cannabis producers in the town of Pelham. So the only change in that is this land use impacts and we're striking that.
So to replace that with and.
Yes, so we're replacing that with and. So any talk on that amendment?
And at the beginning there, Mr. Mayor, the cannabis control, the very first part of the sentence.
Yeah, you're right, yep, okay, cannabis control, but we already talked about it, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
already approved.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment then, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Now we're down to the last one, or, nope, bottom of the page anyway. By mitigating adverse land use impacts, and then we're going to strike further, the Cannabis Control Strike Advisory Committee will strike be a link to the cannabis producers to provide dialogue with producers aimed at, scratch that, help improve the relationship with cannabis producers and the community and promote, and then scratch, for cannabis producers to education and
So it would
scratch
be
the,
promote education,
to promote education and communicating, but how's that?
communication.
Communication.
Oh, I got a Y there. Okay, communication between the,
Between them.
Between them and to strike the words
oh,
on
between
this
them.
industry.
Okay, between them. Okay, anyway, you all have that in front of you, so you can see what we're doing here. So the stuff that has got a line through it, we're removing, and the red one that is underlined is what we are putting in. Any discussion on this amendment? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor of this amendment? Okay, amendment passes. So then we go, turn the page, and we're going under the heading of membership. Membership shall consist of the following: 7 town of Pelham residents from the community at large, so the 7 is the number. We're striking 2 to 3 representatives from licensed cannabis producers. We are striking 1 representative from academic cannabis program, i.e. Niagara College, Brock University, 1 town councillor ex officio, and director of community planning and development or designate as resource to committee ex officio. Any talking on this amendment? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, that could be, is similar to the Utility Sustainability Advisory Committee, where the presence of members and representatives from the utility service providers when requested. So at times, when requested, they can bring in cannabis producers and possibly somebody from the college and advise with them as they're going along. So
Okay,
just wanted to make that.
okay. Just for what it's worth, I'm against this. I'm not going to vote on this amendment. I think it is a huge mistake not having representatives on the table, at the table. I've talked to many people at the region. I know when we had this same thing with the livestock odors, we had, that went all around the province. We had everybody at the table, dialogue was began. Everyone heard from each other. So, I mean, this is going to pass anyway, but I just want to tell you that my own opinion, this is a huge mistake, but it is what it is. Okay, so any other comments on this amendment? Okay, so to voting on this amendment with the 7, we're striking the 2 or 3 representatives, we're striking the 1 representative, and the Director of Community Planning is ex officio. All in favor of this amendment? Amendment passes. And that's all the red I see. So that is all the, oh, we got one more? Sorry, one more page. Ooh, more red. Here we go. So this is under the information requirements, and this is all new. This is all red. So, I wish yeah, so I'll just read it. So here we go. The Cannabis Control Committee's information requirements will be supported by the town where possible and will include federal, provincial, and regional policy statements and plans, current official plan, current bylaws, current permitting process, interim control bylaw, current permits and applications for new cannabis operations or changes to existing ones, current zoning map, current zoning for cannabis operations, site plan control bylaws, Ontario Building Code, business licenses, current taxes paid by cannabis operations, other fees paid to town by cannabis operations, current taxes and other fees paid to town by similar agriculture, residential, commercial, and industrial operations, summary of existing controls, including setback requirements to manage cannabis operations, control measures being considered by other Niagara municipalities and the Niagara region, and control measures being considered or implemented in other jurisdictions. Any discussion on these amendments? Councillor Wayne.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question probably to the clerk. Property taxes, is that public information or is that private information?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was actually just writing you a note. Some of this information may be subject to privacy law, so I would respectfully request that a statement be in there subject to privacy law provisions.
Okay, that can go on to the end?
Yes.
Okay. So, subject to privacy laws provisions.
And then that will give staff the opportunity to investigate that.
Yes. Okay, so, so that would be an amendment then,
That would be
an amendment to the
an
amendment.
amendment to the amendment, so I would suggest you vote on that first
Yes.
and then the rest.
Okay.
Or have comments on it first.
So first, any comment on the amendment to the amendment, which is subject to, all this that I've just read is subject to privacy laws, I can't even read my own writing. Provisions. Yeah. Okay, any comments or discussion on that? Okay, so then we'll vote on the subject part. All those in favor? Okay, so now, so that was the amendment to the amendment, and now we'll vote on the amendment that I just finished reading. All those in favor of the amendment? And that carries. Okay.
I have a motion on the terms of reference as amended.
Okay, so now, I'll ask any questions, first of all, on what we have, on the document we have before us. Okay, so now we are voting on the terms of reference. Oh, should I go to this one now?
So it's this, and this is as amended.
Okay. So now we'll read from the official paper. Motion put forward by Mike Trophy, Councillor Trophy, sorry, that the Committee of the Whole receive this report on the Cannabis Advisory Committee and that the committee recommend that council approve the terms of reference for the Cannabis Advisory Committee as amended, and that the committee directs staff to proceed with the advertising to recruit members to the Cannabis Advisory Committee. Any discussion on the amendment? Amendments, I guess. Okay, and a vote, all in favor of the amendments? Okay, amendment, oh, any opposed? Okay, amendment carries.
Maybe you should say control committee, not advisory committee. No,
That's fine, I'll make that change.
it's
Oh,
control.
okay. Okay, where are we?
Is that what he said?
This one. Oh, adjournment, that's it.
He's gotta go by this. So.
Okay, so, a motion put forward by Councillor Corr that this regular meeting of committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for April 15th, 2019, following council. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries.
Because right now,
You know, in there, you go.